Okay, our final segment here is talking a little bit about moral relativism and how that connects with the idea of professional ethics. So I do want to say in our next unit 1, we will be talking a little bit about different ideas of professional ethics, but I wanted to take a moment to come back to our case study that we started with in the first lecture. You have a close friend who's just received some bad news from the doctor that is a progressive form of cancer. Your friend is understandably upset, but has recently heard of a particular religious group that claims to be able to do faith healings and has cured people of this type of cancer without medical intervention. She seems very hopeful and wants to start to attend these gatherings instead of following the doctor's advice, which would involve more scans and chemotherapy. As a friend who is pursuing a medical degree in nursing, what do you do? So some ethical questions that we could explore, and this is going to be our discussion topic as we look at issues of relativity and judgment. What are your obligations as a friend to talk about the good or aspects of her decision? I think oftentimes we have this idea, which is sort of connected with moral relativism, of like, well, no judgment, we just listen. And I think there's a place for that, particularly in relationships and even professionally, there might be times where you just need to listen. But I do wonder, and we're going to look at virtue-based ethics in the next unit, but Aristotle has a lot to say about the notion of friendship, and one of the things is that we don't want harm to come to our friends. And so if they're taking a particular course of action that you think is harmful, there is, according to Aristotle, an ethical obligation you have as a friend to at least speak up. So there's some interesting things to explore there. Not harsh judgment, not unfair judgment, but there are ways that we make judgments about decisions that we seek the good for our friends. What are your obligations as a healthcare provider to inform and to instruct? One of the things we're going to look at is certainly your obligations as a nurse to provide informed consent to patients. But even beyond, in your personal life, there might be places where you now have medical awareness and information. And what are ways that you can help inform and instruct others? What are other individuals or stakeholders that you could consult and have an impact or be impacted by her decision? Oftentimes you're focused on the person in front of you that's making a decision, but there are lots of other people who can both assist and have a stake in any one decision. And so when we're doing ethical analysis, we want to think about who are those other stakeholders that need to be considered. We're going to I want to talk a little bit about the difference between a career and a calling. I've done this unit in different places, but I think it's relevant for a course like this. The idea of a career, obviously, is that it's connected with a particular service is rendered and an income. But the etymology of the word, how that word has been used in the past and where it comes from in different languages, can sometimes be interesting to explore. It doesn't necessarily define how we use the word today. But the word career comes from the idea of running a race. And it's based on this Latin word, which was connected with chariots and again, grooves of a racetrack. And so, not that a career in any case is a bad thing, but it is connected with sort of this idea of a very kind of structured pathway. Calling, or sometimes connected with the notion of vocation, we often think about this in terms of a religious calling, but the idea of a calling comes from this Latin idea of to call or be called, and is connected with the concept of voice. And so I would encourage you to think about your pursuit of nursing both in terms of career and calling. And I think that as we think about ethics, we might be leaning more toward that notion of calling. How is your voice now different as a result of sort of this awareness, this education, and this power that will come with it? Professional ethics is a recognition that there are moral structures in all sorts of public work we do with others. So for a time, Harvard had a program where whatever field of study you went into, you took an ethics course that was connected with it. So we can think about professional ethics in education, in law, in media and journalism, but certainly with medicine. And so while we're going to look at some bigger healthcare issues, I really wanted to look at sort of those principles, those internal guidelines that are connected with the professional life of a nurse, and that idea of how nursing provides a really important public service to our community. So back to this idea of relativity and absolutes, our sort of final thought here is that there are going to be moral guidelines and ethical principles that are relative to and specific to being a nurse. And while we might not be able to make universal arguments or claim objective truths in these are guidelines that need to be taken seriously as part of the vocation of nursing, and that's what I hope this course will explore more. So I look forward to hear your thoughts and reflections not only in this unit but in the ethical principles we'll be exploring together.